incidentally, fortunately, the government, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu GCFR, did not just create a Ministry of Steel and has a Minister of Steel Development for fun. It's for the kind of progress that he expects to be made, because of how...
Yeah, I had to ask you because it's industry related.
Yeah, because of how steel, how strategic it is, and all of that. And I think that, the government doesn't just think that Ajaokuta has become moribund, and I think that, in the last couple of months, the Minister of Steel Development has actually been in the news in terms of the efforts that are going on over what should happen to that facility.
So we're not seeing anything.
And what I can tell you, for example, is that as I visit Dangote refinery tomorrow, the next day, Thursday or Friday, I'm meeting with, a consortium, a group, that itself is also interested in Ajaokuta, because, for industry, like you mentioned, there's no industry really without steel, so what kind of industrialization do we want to achieve? So what I can tell you like this is that, fortunately, in the next couple of days, I'm having a conversation with an international consortium, that is, is in Nigeria because it's also going to the refinery. But it's also in Nigeria in addition because when it heard that I was going to come to Lagos, they're also very interested in having a conversation with me on steel and on the interest on Ajaokuta.
So are you doing this in partnership with your colleague, Minister?
Definitely. Because
we haven't heard much from that minister. A lot of Nigerians don't even know his name sometimes. With greatest respect.
Like I said, in fairness to him, he's done quite, to make sure that Ajaokuta becomes a different story in the positive. I can tell you that. And after these meetings and sessions and all that, you're going to find much more activity going on that. The second thing about energy is that, energy is the big elephant in the room. Energy, according to the statistics by man, energy, constitutes about 40% of the operational costs, of manufacturers. 40%. And I think it's. I mentioned to you that sometime last quarter of last year, I had my first ministerial roundtable. That ministerial roundtable was on energy, energy and power infrastructure. And one of the, in that room was the Minister of Power, was the Minister of Petroleum Gas, Minister of Petroleum Oil, and all of that. And I've continued to, because of how serious and how important, energy is. When I made a presentation, I appeared before the Presidential Task Force on, petroleum, sector value addition headed by Mr. Fala Adiola, a few days ago. And I praised them for considering industry very, very important, because it's not at all times that people have that link. In some countries, I mentioned to them, the ministry is Ministry of Energy and Industry and all of that. I was in Gas Tech last year. I was at Enoh, because, they need to, the conclusions of the Energy Roundtable last year was on the fact that we need to look at, blended power in terms of, grid power, in terms of, renewables, in terms of gas power. And Nigeria is blessed with enormous gas resources, but we need to see how we can get that linked up, to industry. The AKK, pipeline, very soon, the Ajaokuta Gwagwalada line, is going to be available. But like I said to that committee, availability is one, getting it to the last mile is the other, and all of that. And it's so important. So we're working and hoping that, this big challenge, can actually, be solved, in terms of various ways. When we talk about the NIP is big on closer industrial parks. It's because of the need to get, a number of these together in one location, just so that we can attract all of these, together, various industries and, factories can actually benefit from common services. All of that will be able to tackle and to